Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unlock Podcast. Today we're breaking down the hottest topics in the world of human development. Human development, folks. Okay, all
Great
right, we're going
opening
to
line.
tackle the. What's that?
It's a great opening line.
Okay, yes, human development. I think that's related to human resources, but maybe we'll dive into that. We're going to tackle some of the challenges developing your team, coaching, mentorship, leadership, personal growth, technical growth. But let's get into it. First, I'm Lars Johnson.
I'm Tony Hokinson.
And I'm Chad Lingefelt. And just as a reminder, you can read all about today's episode in a blog with all the show notes on our website at theunlockedpodcast.com. So let's jump into this topic. I'm pretty excited about it. Now, remember last episode we talked about hiring.
Yep.
How to go about the process of hiring. And so we're kind of thinking the next natural state of the conversation should be, well, if I've hired people, how do I develop my team? How do I really engage to grow that team? Right. So yeah,
Well, developing humans, Chad.
developing humans, which is really part of the whole process.
Yeah.
So
I think Elon just took a page out of that and developed his own humans. But
that's something that did happen. Those robots, right? Whatever they're
yeah,
called, whatever he's calling them. Well,
yeah. I was going to say, let me dive into the first topic here. Let's talk about coaching a little bit.
I like it.
I like it. Let's get started. So, coaching has certainly become a more popular term in the last few years. Management has kind of taken the word manager seems to have a negative connotation to it, and people have shifted to coaching a little bit because we're really talking about developing people's skills, developing humans. There you go. Yeah, where management seems to be a corrective right and wrong type of skill set. When we're talking about coaching, we're talking more about um, building people up, more focused on the positives, I would say. I was a women's volleyball coach for about 15 years. I was in university, and trying to keep everyone on the same page, trying to keep everyone emotionally engaged was always part of the biggest challenge. Um, the one of the things I'd always talk about is you think back to grade school. You think, who was your favorite teacher?
Mhm.
And you probably you'll think of somebody that probably made you feel special.
The
Um,
women's volleyball coach, naturally.
it, yes, exactly. Someone that's made you feel special. Something that made you, you know, gave you personal attention. All these things that made you feel positive about yourself. It probably wasn't that. Oh, I like Mr. Green because he was really good at math. Like that wasn't it. It was how that person made you feel.
Mhm.
Now we take that into the workplace. If you can be one of those people that provides that kind of inspiration and that personal connection, I think that's really what we're talking about coaching. That's that next level of management.
Coaches also, I mean, in that same context, which is really cool, coaches also help to craft a skill set and then push you beyond the limits that you think that you already have. So your self-belief, self-limitations, they will help to unlock that. A good coach does, right? And helps you to believe, and then brings a team together, unifies them to move towards a common goal. I mean, it's the basics of coaching 101.
Yeah, we just talked about this yesterday, actually, in a group of managers. The difference between educating and coaching. A lot of times, you instruct people on how to do something, but if you're not coaching them and helping them implement it, a lot of time it can go along the wayside. I think there's a lot of situations where, you know, um, Lars, you might need some coaching on golf, and if I just tell you what to do with golf, you're not going to learn. But if I coach you along the way, implement that, and help you take those skills and actually implement them on the course, it'll go a lot further. So teaching someone to fish as opposed to fishing for them. Instead of just telling them what to do and giving them the right answer, help them implement it.
And I think we've all seen your coaching on the golf course and how effective that it has been with Lars. So I mean, that's
It's
one
a
thing.
tough one to be effective with, but
Eh, Am I in bizarro world right now? What is happening? You two are coaching me on the golf course. My God, moving
Oh,
on.
I never said
Tony, tell us a little bit, please, about Leaders Eat Last.
Leaders Ate Last.
Get us out
Actually, a
of this
great book if you
insanity.
haven't read it. Definitely read it if you have not read it. Simone Sinek, a lot of good stuff. But in general, I think with Leaders Eat Last, making sure that as a manager, as a leader, you're not dominating a conversation. We place an emphasis in our team on collaboration. It's one of our core values, but and sometimes I think then people would say we do it too much. But always seek other opinions first when you walk into a meeting. If you have a discussion topic, don't sit there and dominate the discussion yourself. Making sure you're gathering input from the team and letting that input play itself out. I think a lot of people say that the common theme of hire smart people, let them make the decisions. It's something we try to do, and make sure that you're just not dominating that conversation.
The whole concept around leaders eat last in that book really, it starts out with a story around a military troop that
Hmm.
is going into battle, and I believe if my memory serves correctly, it's around a troop that was on a helicopter, and they were having to fly directly into a battle or air fighting squad or something like that, and they were fighting directly into battle, and it was all around one leading in first and making sure that the other people were taken care of first and the leader was taken care of last, and that's that whole philosophy. And then at the end of the day, all in the military, they're focused on, according to this book, they're focused on making sure that the troops got their food first. The last people that got in line were the officers, to make sure that the troops were fed and nourished and taken care of. And it really comes back to, in any type of leadership mentality, are you doing things for the benefit of others? Are you doing things for the benefit of yourself?
Yeah, Simon Sinek mentioned that even as simple as when they got their lunch, the leaders ate last. It was a true analogy of he observed this when he studied the military, which a lot of his books are based off of, and sat down for lunch one day, and the leaders were the last ones to get their lunch. They didn't feed themselves first, and he, like you said, Chad, when it even in combat, that's how they acted, and they did as something as simple as eating lunch, and as complicated as fighting in combat.
Yeah, that's a pretty literal interpretation. I take this in the direction of, it's just a little reminder to also stay humble.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
it's easy when you start having some success to think about all the good things that you've done. One of the common things we talk about in our management team is, when our team succeeds, it's the team that succeeds, and when things go wrong, we step up and own that ourselves. Just as a person in leadership, if something does go wrong, generally there was something along the way that could have been handled differently. I took a leadership course, I think, about a year ago. I was at SATE, and they strongly encouraged me to not actively participate in the discussions,
Hmm.
more so to wait to the end,
Mhm.
because the what do they call it? The hippo, the highest paid person, opinion, the hippo. Because once I say something, it's natural for the team to say, "Oh yeah, 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 that's what we're doing," as opposed to waiting to the end.
Yep.
The other thing I think about here is, um, well, actually, we're going to get that a little bit, so maybe I'll save that one for what's coming next.
Well, I want to tag on to what you just said, Lars, because I just read an article yesterday around, it was on the Harvard Business Review, and it was the whole article, I've got it right here in front of me, but it was about how high performing teams build trust. And one of the elements in there was high performing teams share credit. Instead of soaking up praise alone, members of high performing teams are more likely to share recognition for their accomplishments with teammates by acknowledging or thanking those who played a role in their success. In doing so, they increase the likelihood of their colleagues feeling appreciated and promote a norm of reciprocity, both with of which will contribute to the experience of trust. And so it's all really building around a trust mechanism. And if you're recognizing the positive work that other people are doing in and praising them and not taking the credit for yourself, which I think, to this point, right around developing a team, and if you don't have a humble leader or a leader with some level of humility, it can turn into an ego trip. As you said, if you have any level of success, people are going to tell you you're doing a good job. And at some point in time, you start to act like you're better than everybody else, and it can become a problem with your team.
Yeah. If you want an idea of what this should sound like, Google any interview of a Canadian hockey player. You know, oh, you played really well tonight. Yeah, the team was firing on all cylinders, and the line mates did this, and it's naturally bred into Canadian hockey players. So that's the reference I always use.
Well, it kind of leads into personal development, right? So I was processing information for this episode, and I really was thinking about, you cannot have development going on for your team. It's going to be hard to develop a team that you've hired and you're trying to coach and all that stuff if you are not developing yourself first. And I think all too often we can get lazy or lackadaisical in our own mentality of personal growth. And I was thinking about it from a perspective of when you're on an airplane, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on first before you help other people. As leaders, how are we putting that oxygen mask on first? How much investment are you making in yourself from a personal development side? Do you have a leadership coach? Do you have a peer group that you're a part of? Are you growing in your own right from a leadership, ownership, financial, any of those types of directions? Or are you just expecting your team to automatically develop on their own? So, where are you setting that standard from? And I tell you from my own personal experience, it has been a challenge at times. Again, when you're the hippo, to one dedicate time for development because you feel like where are you supposed to go for that? How do you find the group of people? How do you find the resources? So for me personally, a lot of audiobooks, a lot of, like I just mentioned, the Harvard Business Review articles. I have a business coach. I have a business peer group. I have these two guys that I talk to regularly. One, they help keep me grounded. If you ever hang around Lars, he'll help keep you grounded. And then you can continue to develop yourself. And in which case, then you can lean in, pour into your team, and all these other things that we were talking about from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, I first of all, you're welcome. I think is what I took from that first 2 minutes.
Yep,
You're welcome,
yep.
Chad. Anything I could do to help? Um, the personal development side, I think about for our team. It is so easy as I'm guessing a lot of the listeners, aside maybe our parents, maybe there's somebody else listening, but if there are probably a lot of small business owners, and it is so easy to get in that habit of having the answer. So if a
Mhm.
question comes up, you have the answer. And because it's quick, it's efficient. But what you're actually doing is you're training them to not make decisions, right? That you're training them to come to you for the answer, which at a company, when you only have 12, 13, 14 people, that's fine. Once you get up to 20 and 30,
Mhm.
40, 50, you realize it's just not sustainable. And really trying to develop people on critical thought and ask questions and try and understand the concepts that are driving the solutions, it pays off in spades. So it's a challenge for yourself because you have the answer and you can get it done and move on to the next task because we're generally task oriented.
Mhm.
But taking that extra time to explain the why, I think that's another book. Start with why. Um, it just in a long term solution for the business. That's going to be your best method for sure.
Yeah, in relation to personal development for the team, it's something we've been trying to be very intentional about with our quarterly OKR setting and making sure that we're providing space for people to grow within our company, making sure it's clear to them how they can grow and then what they need to do to hit that growth and providing them with the tools to grow. So if someone wants to learn more about marketing, making sure that we're finding classes for them to take on marketing, or if someone wants to learn more about Microsoft Excel, making sure we're helping them do that learning. We realize that, we talked about this in the last podcast, that we're trying to do what we can to attract A players. If we don't give them an opportunity to grow within our company and the tools to grow, they'll go find that elsewhere. So we've really tried to place a strong emphasis when we do quarterly OKR setting to make sure that there's not just team goals and role goals, but also what can we do to help you personally grow and make sure that we're contributing to that.
So I got to ask, Chad, sorry, before we move on here, how do you guys walk the line between getting stuff done
Mhm. Yep.
and personal development, which usually means long term results? So how
Yep.
my hair's on fire now, but I want to grow for the long term. How do you walk that line? How do you make that decision? Or what do you guys do in your business and your personal lives?
Well, I will say that it's been a long journey, right? So yeah, I think about this a lot. Back 2016, 2015, I had this realization that I had to shift something in myself to develop myself as a leader, to grow if I wanted to bring our company to the next level. And so I had to make several changes by the way that I operate. And one of those was very specific, and anybody probably that listens to these podcasts, and especially these two guys, know I've got a natural sarcastic tendency. I can, jab and joke with the best of them.
No.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I had to shift that, especially in a leadership role, because I couldn't lead that way. I had to understand a little more around the people that I was dealing with. So I've shared this story before. I used to say people just have to get to know me to appreciate my humor and my style.
Hmm.
And what I learned the hard way in a personal development realm was I wasn't giving people the time to do that. So if I can come across that way at the very beginning, then I'm probably running people off before we can get to the point of learning.
Hmm.
So that's a start of an answer for you to say in the long term. Once the mentality started to shift there, then it was what are the fundamentals of our business? The word culture is a buzzword, but it really was is the culture of our
Hmm.
business to be sarcastic and condescending and short with people and to always get the last jab in.
Hmm.
And if it is that the way that we're going to attract people? Is that the type of operation that we want? And is that the way that we want to interact with our customers? So we started foundationally and it, went back to our core values and just the kind of understanding of our operations. And so the line is difficult because we look at this all the time. We spend a lot of time talking about the type of people that we want to be,
Hmm.
probably to a 2-to-1 ratio of the things that we do, the technical side, which we're going to be talking about next. But we spend more time. As a matter of fact, this entire month that we're recording this podcast, whenever this airs, but this month that we're in October that we are in right now, we're dedicating every Wednesday morning our team meeting breaking down our core values, and we're
Mhm.
talking more about the behaviors that we want to operate under as an organization. And so from a development side, that's really where I look at it is how are we feeding people that information, more of the type of company that we want to be based off
Hmm.
of the type of human that I hope to be, and then how are we caring for those people for the long term, and then the results of that should be one, tenure, and two, better interactions with the customers,
Hmm.
better interactions with the team as a whole.
Was there a moment that you realized, oh, I got to grow up, and this maybe isn't what I want to be? Was there a specific moment you remember?
It's funny, Lars. I've talked about this a lot. The space that we're in. We've expanded since then, but we had a small break room, which is
Hmm.
now our larger break room with their coffee shop. And I was standing there. We had a standing height round table, and I was talking to somebody, and it just clicked with me, and I was like, "Oh no, I've
Hmm.
got this. There has to be a
Hmm.
change. The only change is I can affect is with me right now."
Hmm.
And then how do I carry that the long term so that we get the results?
I had Tony. Did you have one of those moments?
For me, my answer to that question is a little different. I think I've pr- you asked what are we doing to try to make sure that we're placing a priority on growing ourselves and balancing that with the day to day.
Hmm.
For me, it's I try to do it during different times of the day. So a lot of times when I'm working, around other people, I try to make sure that I'm working on in the business and helping the business grow. But I also try to do a lot of investment in myself outside of work. So,
Hmm.
like Chad mentioned earlier, reading audiobooks, listening to podcasts, doing as much as I can to just try to learn. You guys know I love to ask you guys questions, love to ask everyone questions, love to learn. And then making sure a big thing I've been trying to focus on lately is making sure that I'm implementing that knowledge that I learn instead of just learning it. What
Mhm.
can I do? Setting myself dates to make stuff happen and actually
Hmm.
implement what I'm learning.
Good job, Tone.
Good job, Tone. I like that you guys both gave a shout out to me. So that's everyone listening should just take note of that. I think technical training.
Quality Canadian hockey player right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't play much hockey.
But
all all cylinders were firing. It was a team game, but it was mostly me. Yeah. The technical training. So that is something that in our industry, if we're talking literal technical training, that is something that is always a big challenge. And I think it comes right down to the necessity of, well, my hair's on fire, I got to get this done right now
yeah.
versus a long-term growth. So let's just get this done and then we'll do the next thing. Well, let's just get this done, then we'll do the development thing. And in our industry, there's very few times that we actually get back to it. So, we can take this one of two ways, where we can either talk about kind of our team and our frontline technical people, the guys that are in the field turning the wrenches, and how do we dedicate time to that? Because if we're not, all we're really doing is developing bad habits, and bad habits build bad culture is bad company, et cetera, et cetera. But we can also take that spin on our own technical training. And I think, Chad, you've kind of talked about that, your own personal development. The three of us, I know we've got a whole bookshelf of books that we've all read, and we all speak, relatively the same amount, or the same language, using the same tools.
Yes.
You say funnier words than me, and vehicles and decals and weird things like that. But for the most part, I think we're on the same page. The thing I look at is, I always ask myself, if I'm not looking into these things, if I'm not looking into new technologies, new business practices, new tools, new AI, I won't even go down that path, but AI, if I'm not doing this stuff, who is? If
Yeah.
I'm the leader of the organization and I'm the one in charge of making sure that's important, if I'm not doing it and leading by that example, I don't think anyone is.
No, it's true. And if you're not, then who are you designating to be responsible for it? Especially on the technical side, if you, I things have evolved inside of any organization, and it's difficult for me in our organization now to be the technology guy, right? The
Mhm.
mechanical knowledge source. And I don't really want to be, because that's not my strong suit. And to Tony's point earlier around hiring smart people, that's really, how do you get into that? How do you get the smart people involved in the leadership level from a mechanical, technical, knowledge based side? And that's where the training starts. But if it's always reliant upon the owner, then it seems like it does create a level of a ceiling of growth on the technical know-how.
Yeah, and I would say it's important to make sure you're measuring if you're doing training and how that progress is going. When I started working for our company just over 10 years ago, we were always talking about training. We need more training. We need more training. And every year, training was an emphasis. Training was an emphasis. But we just talked about it. We never did anything with it.
Mhm.
So finally, last year, we hired somebody to put in charge of training. And now we have a skill set matrix that we've implemented where we're measuring what people are learning, where they're at, and what they need to focus on. And it wasn't until we hired someone and put them in charge of that actually started getting implemented. And it maybe didn't necessarily take hiring that person to do that, but I think making sure that you have somebody that is focused on that. We talked a little bit about this in our last episode, but
Mhm.
just making sure that you're putting an emphasis on technical training in our industry, especially. You're not going to go out and find 20 people that know how to do locksmithing. We have to teach people,
Mhm.
and we have to make sure that we're doing things like building training centers and creating training programs to make sure that if we want to grow, we're helping that talent develop and making sure that it's happening and measuring that it's happening.
So give us something tangible here. What what are you doing specifically for technically train your locksmiths or electronics people in the field?
So I actually do not know what is on our skill set matrix because I did not design it. But we have a matrix that we basically are going through and saying this person knows how to install a door closer. This person knows how to install a lever. This person knows how to key high security locks. And we're making sure that people know how to do those things. And if they don't, they're going out with our technical trainer and getting trained on them. We're working on building a training center.
So it's
We
live in the field though.
Right
Like
now
you
it
go
is for
through
us. I know you
the
guys
calls
both
ahead
have.
of time. Yeah.
Yes. So we
Okay.
we are working on acquiring some space to build a training center similar to what you guys have. We currently do not have that. So we're doing it in the field and just being on the lookout. Our dispatchers are aware of, these are the types of calls that this person needs to go see. If a good opportunity comes up, I'm going to make sure to bring this person with me, and just making sure. And we've been always trying to do that for the last few years, but now we're actually trying. We're measuring what do people know, what
Mhm.
are their areas of growth, what are they focused on for the quarter, and actually creating this rubric that outlines this person needs to go on handicap operator calls and learn it. If they come up, make sure that they make themselves available.
Right.
And in our company, one of the biggest issues with that is we're always so busy. We're always so busy. And then a lot of times training doesn't get prioritized,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we can't grow if we don't train. So
Mhm.
we've really placed an intentional shift on. It doesn't matter how busy we are. If someone needs to learn something, they get pulled off their job and they go with and learn on this. So
And I know, Chad, you have a pretty unique setup there.
Yeah, man, Tony, you just said a lot of really good things that we've learned the massive hard way. So I wish I would have had that conversation years ago. The training, everything you just said is valuable. The training side is so difficult to maintain. So there's a window of new hire orientation. you have them designated for a certain period of time, and you can try to do training. But what's the ongoing training cycle is really been the challenge. How do you continue
Mhm.
to refine those skills? Because you just like, are you just assuming that they're going to get better in the field, or how do you continue to pour into that? How do you validate it? And so we had a pretty strict process that we operated under from a hiring standpoint, and they went through this 8 to 12 week training program before they got launched. And it was not as much of a fire hose, but it was a pretty intense saturation for that amount of time. And if you talk to anybody in the industry, they're going to say it takes 12 months to 18 months to train anybody. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of value to that. But how do you process it? How do you make that work? So a little over a year ago, it's probably close to, yeah, almost a year and a half now, we started this process of developing a tier-based system, a technician level system that
Mm.
says, this is what we would expect for a new hire. This is what we expect for level 1 all the way up to level 5. And then each of those have a level of criterias associated with them. And kind of the thought process on this, and so we're now, like, in the process of valuing each of our existing, what's the grandfathering
Mhm.
process to bring everybody into this leveling system, and um, how do you create that criteria? So we have the criteria. We say these are the tasks that we believe that someone should be able to do with this level um, of accuracy, and then how, like, from a gaining training standpoint, they can be responsible for managing that. So we have the resources available. But if I'm a technician and I want to hang out at level 2, then I'll hang out at level 2. But if I
Mhm.
want to strive and be driven to get to level 4, level 5, what are the steps that I need to get there? And so that is the process that we've been working under,
Mhm.
to allow them to drive that. Because to your point, when you go and say you have to be in training every so many hours or whatever, you create this tension between a training director and a field manager or a service manager or whatever, because they say I need people in the field to do the work.
Mhm.
The training director says I need the people in here so I can train them, and it's never a good time to pull somebody out of a field. It's just always
Mhm.
inconvenient. So creating that rhythm and then putting that onus back on the manager and the individual. If I want to grow, then here are the steps to grow.
Mhm. Yeah, we have the luxury of having some resources and some people to, dedicate to this. And I haven't even told you guys this, but on Tuesday, a couple days ago, was our opening day for the School of Lock,
Mm.
um, which we have a
It's a nice
retired.
spin there.
What's that?
I said that's a nice spin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a retired locksmith who had a very successful company here. Um, he is teaching, and we've got first class is 3, and we've already got people signed up for others. But the whole idea is we've got a 12-week curriculum.
Mm.
In our world, Weiser keyways and Schlag keyways are very popular,
Mhm.
and so what they have to learn in 12 weeks is gloss aluminum hardware, and then keying Weiser, Schlag, and Medico. That's pretty industry specific, but if my thought was if they could know gloss aluminum hardware and those 3 keyways, they can adjust a door closer and they can align an exit device. That probably handles 90% of service calls.
Mhm.
And so that is our goal, is within 12 weeks to have someone hired from the street to be in a service van, um, performing service calls. And then they'll go out there and we'll rotate people through. So it's been a long time coming, but it just started on Tuesday. So today is actually their second day, and we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Well, congratulations. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's just well, we'll see. It's an idea. I'll let you
Yeah.
know.
The
When
the
y
the hard part about it is after that 12-week process, what does week 30, what does week
Mhm.
45, and so on? How do you re-engage, bring them back in? Because, it's that has really been our challenge, because we've had a training director in place since 2017.
Mhm.
So it's for quite some time we've been able to hire and train in that cycle, and the hardest part has been the continuing education element.
Mhm.
So
And
people might be interested to know how many employees did you have when you hired a full-time training director?
You're asking me?
Yes.
We were was 28, maybe close to
Okay.
30. And the problem was that we were having was the length of time it took for one person to train somebody,
Mhm,
and we
Mhm,
didn't have a dedicated resource to it.
mhm.
mhm.
And we were in a mode that we needed to hire 3 technicians at a
Mhm.
time and not just 1. And so it was an impossible feat for somebody that was already working in the business to do that training. So we had to pull somebody, designate them, and delegate that cycle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would encourage people to make that move as soon as possible. I know we added a full-time person around 50 employees, and it was too late. And now we have 2
Mhm.
people dedicated exclusively to training, one that oversees the program and one more on the technical side.
Mhm.
And I wish we had done it sooner, a lot sooner. So I think a lot of times people think, how can I justify adding a salary to be dedicated to training? And I wish we would have done it a lot sooner.
Yeah, I know where the next topic we're diving into is mentorship matters, and I think Tony, you're going to jump in on that one. Um,
Yes.
Hopefully, if he follows the cue here, yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, this is actually an interesting topic. We have just started exploring implementing a mentorship program within our company, trying to see if there's any interest there. I'm not too familiar with this topic. I personally have a lot of kind of informal mentors, and I think in our company we have a lot of informal mentors, and it's something we're trying to formalize. And I'm interested to hear from you guys. Have you implemented any sort of mentorship program within your company to help, new employees learn things, or have you specifically relied on managers? And I'm more interested in this topic to hear from you guys.
well,
I was
we
interested to hear from you, so I'm
Mm.
stuck. So we're just kinda all gonna sit here and
yeah,
stare at
we
each
can
other.
sit here and stare. It's riveting,
Yeah.
riveting content on a podcast.
I will say I used to work for Thomson Reuters, and when I worked there, there was a formal mentorship program that was kind of nice because you would have your manager, and sometimes you were maybe could be intimidated by your manager. You may not quite feel like opening up to them, especially when you're brand new. And the mentor program was more of a peer or somebody else's manager that had no stake in your development at all, and they were just there to help you. They were just there to help you, guide you through the company. And that was a very large company where you kind of needed some help. But so that's kind of why we had the idea of rolling out some form of a mentor program. And like I said, right now we just sent out some emails and are talking to people to see if there's interest. But I know the overall goal is to just give somebody another resource to go to, um, someone else to get help from. We've had situations in our company where the manager may have not as had, may have been overloaded and not had as much time to delegate or to spend on all their employees, and have had some informal mentorship programs in our company, but just looking at making it more formal.
Yeah, I can speak to this as one thing we've made a fairly recent change. I think back in May, we've always struggled with leadership of our technical group. I found our flock of locksmiths there really isn't anyone that enjoys the management side and enjoys more so the administration part that generally
Mm-hmm.
comes along with management.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of changed the context a little bit, just changed the concept of what we were looking for in our technical team. We actually made so we have I'm going to say approximately 20 technical guys in the field. Um, we created 3 leads, so they're not managers; they're leads. What they are there is they're strictly mentorship. And so they're 3 senior guys. They're all journeymen, and they all. So when you start with our company as an apprentice, you're assigned to one of the journeymen. So they all have teams of about 4 or 5. What does that look like? Well, it means every morning they get together and they'll have a coffee with their teams. They'll read through the jobs that are associated or assigned to everyone through the day. They just go through it. Hey, have you done that before? And talk through it.
Hmm.
Um, so they spend those days, and then if those guys have trouble in the field on that day, that's the first person they call. So they call their senior guy that helps them out. Of the 3, there's one guy's name's Ryan, who I'd say has probably been the most successful so far. Um, and I would attribute that a lot to his empathy. I think one of the things that's tough to do, especially in male dominated industry, is show some vulnerability
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
your teams. So Ryan talks to me a lot about, oh man, I remember when I was there. Oh, I didn't have this, or I didn't have this, or this part sucked, and he lives it again, and he uses that to basically guide him on how to mentor his apprentices.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, his apprentices, just love the guy. They'd do anything for him, and vice versa. And that's the kind of glue that builds a team. And
Yeah.
it's just empathy and vulnerability. And he just, as soon as he meets them, he has a coffee, sits down with them, and say, hey, what do you do outside of work? Get on that personal level. And it's really been rewarding to watch that happen.
I think
It's
that previously our training director, Thomas, did a really good job of this. The challenge that we had was the transition to another mentor. So he just kind of curated a larger group as they were going through the training program. And he didn't really have, and offload is a really terrible term, but he didn't have anybody to hand them off to and to continue that process in a formalized manner. But he did a good job formalizing it in the training program, mentoring them, understanding, and creating a safe space for those people to come and say, I don't understand this. I don't know what I'm doing in this particular situation. And then he was able to work with them and give them that feedback, that critical feedback to continue to develop and go forward. So I don't think this is a thing that we've talked about, I don't know, 4 or 5 different times over the years, and we've never been able to formalize it. And so I like the topic because it brings it back to my mind of saying, man, we don't do a great job at this. And what are the elements that we need to put in place to be able to put a mentorship in place? Because I know the benefit of it for me personally from mentors that I've had throughout the years. And, kind of shame on me for not finding a way to formally introduce it into our organization.
I really like the idea of the technical mentor. We have a lot of technicians that are very experienced. They don't necessarily want to be managers, but they have a ton of knowledge to share. And when new employees come in, pairing them up, and
Yeah.
I really like that idea.
Are we on to the next topic?
Kind of looks that way.
I think
I
it's
think-
me. Is it
That
me?
is you.
Chad,
That is
it's time
definitely
for
you.
some regular feedback. Yeah.
See, this is where if we had these names written down, it'd be a lot easier, Chad.
Oh boy. All right.
Mhm.
So regular feedback.
Oh boy.
This is me giving you regular feedback.
And I appreciate it, Tony. It was a great segue that you've done there.
Unfortunately, too regular.
Yes. So regular feedback is huge. And I think this is one area that we've done a good job in our organization. So years ago, I was part of a group called EntreLeadership. And I know Tony is not a fan of EntreLeadership, very much so, but
it's a great podcast, by the way.
it is. I think
EntreLeadership. I think it's great. Ramsey.
It's been very impactful for me as an individual. But
He's
Tony,
got some good stuff. He's got some things.
Tony's just very opinionated in that.
Like the
That was a
whole
thing.
envelope system. He's just very old school and just not my style.
Oh yeah, saving money and
Yeah.
that's terrible.
But anyways,
okay. So they had this program inside of EntreLeadership, which was a weekly report, and then the other major component that they taught was to have a employee scorecard or a feedback system. So I think that this is 3 tiers. We have a program where every employee has the ability to fill out a weekly report. What was your high this week? What was your low this week? And then some criterias around stress, workload, and morale. And it's a simple 5-minute or less form that they can fill out every single week. And that just gives our leadership team an understanding of where that person is. If there's kind of mounting frustrations or workload issues or whatever. That's level 1. Level 2 is every month, each team member gets an email and they can log into a portal and give feedback on any of their peers that they want to. So they can give it to every single person that they work with, or it can be just 1 or 2, and they score them on a couple of different criterias. We use the ideal team player methodology, so humble, hungry, and smart. And then we also have a criteria around some of the core actions that we have in our organization: helpful and kind communication, fast response, and helping solve problems. So they rate them on those. And then they have an area where they can give them constructive feedback or positive shout outs. And my gosh, this has been one of the coolest things that I've seen in our organization, because every month there's 60 to 80 different feedback loops that are coming in there, and it's
Mm.
all peer driven. So now as an employee, I log in and I can see, hey, these 3 people said I'm doing a fantastic job in these specific areas. Or one person said, you know what, you're not communicating well and you seem to have isolated yourself and you're not working with the team very well. Okay, that's a checkpoint for me. So it's a layered where team member actually sees it, and then the management obviously also has the ability to see that and make those
Hmm.
get that input as well. And then finally, this was something that Zach implemented over the last year or so that he has been in our operations role, is a team individual team members review on their annual um, anniversary of their hire date. So it's combined obviously with other things, but he provides them with a longer survey of areas that they want to grow in, areas
Mhm.
that they are struggling in, feedback for their particular leader, all this, and it's a longer survey, and it just kind of creates that feedback loop on one, how's the company performing, how's the company supporting you, what are areas that you want to grow in, and so it paints us a full picture, one weekly, monthly, and then annually, to try to create that regular feedback on what's going on, not only on the employee side and giving them feedback, but also on the leadership side as well.
Mhm. We do something similar. Um, Shocking, but we do an employee net promoter score. So same idea, but
Mm.
we use SurveyMonkey. It's free. Just sign in. It's automated. I think we ask 4 questions basically. How was your week? How did you like working in your department this week? How did you like working in the lock and safe group? And it's just something. And then we have standards. If it's,
Mhm.
they respond 6 or lower, there's a management checkout. If it's 5 or lower, it's senior managers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But just use SurveyMonkey, sends it out. You get the answers right away. It's very easy to implement, very easy to automate. Doesn't take any time, but it gives you a good, um, a good not barometer, a thermometer. That's the word I'm looking for
Mm.
the temperature of the organization.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you could use a Google form as well. Just anything that's a easy to access form and survey.
Yeah.
we do a more informal check-in, but very structured. All of our managers do one-on-ones with every one of their employees on a very consistent basis, either weekly or bi-weekly, sometimes monthly. But we get a lot of we encourage our managers to really build relationships with all their employees and get a lot of that feedback, same day. Great book out there called Radical Candor talks
Hmm.
about if you give someone feedback a month later, it's not impactful. We just actually rolled out a guideline on feedback and making sure that
Mm.
if you see somebody doing something wrong, don't go to your manager, have your manager tell their manager, have their manager tell them, and like go up and down the chain. Like,
Hmm.
let them know they probably don't even know they're doing something wrong. So
Hmm.
we're trying to encourage direct feedback as much as possible, good and bad. And then also making sure that managers are building a good relationship with all their employees so that if there is something wrong with their employee, the employee tells them. And we make sure to keep a really close pulse on how people are doing, what's causing them stress, what's going well. We have a series of questions that we ask depending on the week, and just kind of let people create that relationship, and figure out what's going well, what's causing frustrations, what are some highlights of the week,
Hmm.
and then make sure that we follow up on those actions. We uh, Something I learned from Chad is closing that loop on things. If you hear that feedback and it just gets squirreled away and you don't follow up on it, then
Mm.
people won't want to give more feedback.
Hmm.
So we've been trying to be very intentional about, if we get feedback, making sure that we follow up on, here's what we're doing with this feedback, here's our next steps, and making sure that it gets done. So
Yeah, I can probably save you the $25 on buying the book, Radical Candor. Just comes from honesty, coming from a place of
yeah,
caring, right? It's vulnerability and empathy, and coming from a place of caring. If you are speaking from a place of caring, you can be direct in the feedback.
yep,
Yep.
Um, but it has to be in that order.
correct.
Um, Quick pivot. We're going to talk about celebrating wins. So this is something I talk about. I have a different peer group. Um, it's an entrepreneurship group, and we talk about celebrating wins, being in positions of leadership or an owner of a company.
Mhm.
Now, what people don't see is it's quite lonely. You've probably heard the saying, "It's lonely at the top," but you feel very isolated, and it's a challenge because you're supposed to be the one with the answers, and if you don't have the answer, our natural tendency is to internalize it, and it's entrepreneurs in general are generally these driven, competitive people that want to win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mhm.
funny, if you ask people that are driven and competitive, you ask them about their wins, and they'll say, "Oh, I don't know, I don't remember. Yeah, I did something like this." But you ask them about, "Oh, what did you lose last?" "Oh man, this one," and they'll tell every single detail. And a couple things. One, that's not healthy for yourself, right? To be in that constant state. But two, it also, leadership. It starts at the top, and if you're constantly focusing on what to improve,
Mm-hmm.
it's like this. It's almost like a storm cloud that's following you, and then you'll find that your team's like, dude, this guy's always grumpy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's his problem, right? So, taking the moments to actually, stop and smell the roses, or whatever little term you want to use, is super important. One, for yourself to realize the success that you've enjoyed and the team has enjoyed, but also for the team to see that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not just work.
Lars, has anybody ever said to you something along the lines of, it's never enough, or,
Mm.
like, why are you always pushing me to the next level?
uh has someone said that to me? Not today, I don't think, but yeah.
Yesterday for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a challenge. I sat through a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about, it was actually Culture Index, but they were talking about how high A's, right, are very driven, goal oriented people. And the challenge with it is, once you achieve the goal, it's almost like you are expected to achieve the goal.
Hmm.
And so once you do it, then it's on to the next. And what you just said was like, you're constantly working on improvements inside of your organization. I laugh about it because I've got this thing right behind me that says always improving,
Hmm.
Hmm.
constantly focusing on it. And so when it's achieved, that's what is expected.
Hmm.
It wasn't anything amazing in our minds, right? It wasn't anything
Hmm.
amazing. It was just, that's what you were supposed to do. And I remember years ago, one of our team members said to me, he's like, "There's always a but." I was like,
Mm.
because we had this great
That
opportunity.
was
I'm like,
great,
yes, but
but
we need to do this.
could
And
have
he's
done
like,
this better. Yeah.
"There's always a but." And he just got so frustrated. He
Mhm.
said, "There's always a but." And he got up and walked out of the room. And I was like, okay. It is not apparent to me in my mind. And so I'm
Mhm.
terrible at this. Celebrating wins is the farthest thing from my mind. Fortunately, we have people in our organization that are really good with it.
Mhm.
And I've had to loop them in and say, when you see these things, let's make a big deal about it, because it's just my blinders don't even see it.
Mhm.
And it is a challenge, because once you achieve, then it's on to the next mountain. It's on to the next thing that you're trying to accomplish. And so it's something we have to be aware of. And if we are so blind to it, who are we going to hand that off to so that it can be
It's a great
Yeah.
segue into the next topic, Chad. You have delegated celebrating to your people. Um, so delegation, this is something that I definitely struggle with. Somebody, I like to do things a particular way. Everyone that works with me knows that.
That's
Um,
the biggest understatement in the history of the Unlock podcast.
and one of the
to
things
do
that I have
things
learned
a
recently,
particular way.
and heard a lot recently that I've tried to implement, is being very clear about what you're trying to achieve. Make sure you set the expectations. This is what I'm looking for. This is the objective I'm trying to achieve, and letting people achieve that in however they want. They may not do it the same way as you. I listen to a lot of podcasts by Dan Martell, and one of his famous sayings is, 80% done by someone else is 100% better than 100% done by you. And that's something important to keep in mind, that someone may not do it the exact way you did it, but making sure that you give them the opportunity to do it, and they might do it better or a different way. Um, Another thing that I've struggled with delegating, that I think is very important, is to make sure you prioritize teaching people and having the patience to let them learn. It's really hard to say, this person doesn't know how to do this as well as I do, so I'm just going to not do it. But have the patience, let them learn, because if you don't delegate, you'll never get out of your own way. One of the biggest steps we made as a company was when we hired some new employees and I started delegating our operations and our sales.
Mm,
Had I never done that, we would have not gone on to do acquisitions and not gone on to grow, because I would have been stuck in the day to day.
yeah.
So making sure that you prioritize that. And this kind of ties back a little bit to what you talked about earlier, Lars, with personal development. I think you have to delegate in order to build time for yourself to learn. Because if you don't delegate, then you will not grow individually. And if you don't grow individually, your organization cannot grow, or people will grow around you, and then you're just stuck. Um, uh, as from someone who struggles with delegating, definitely make sure you make it a priority. Try it, learn how to do it. Ask people, what could I have done better to delegate this to you? Um, and just have patience with others and let them learn.
I'm sorry, I was laughing so hard when you first started talking about you like to do things a particular way because all I could think about, Lars, was January of 2020 when Tony was struggling so much with figuring out how to park in
Oh
downtown.
my
Mm.
God.
3 episodes, and you had to bring that up. At least you made it 3 episodes.
I mean, it's
January
hard.
in Minneapolis. Beautiful place to be in January, I might add. Oh man.
I know it's an inside story and it's going to be hard to explain it, but the hilarity around Tony driving us around and trying to park was so humorous. Okay.
There's
Del-
only one parking spot in all of Minneapolis, apparently.
I found it though.
And it just took Tony 45 minutes of driving around in circles to find the
You know,
perfect
it
spot.
was just really good bonding time with you guys.
oh, it
It
was.
was.
There was lots of. Okay.
Yeah.
So one question that I thought about with this is what things have you delegated that have provided the most benefit for your company? So I'll let you think about that for just a quick second.
I can
And
answer that if you'd like.
oh, yeah, go ahead. Jump in, Tony.
The first thing was sales. I was too busy selling. I was not doing a good. I believe I was a good salesperson, but it wasn't my top priority. So then sales was not a top priority from our company. So as a small business, getting out of the way of sales, finding somebody to do that for you,
Mhm.
helping them along the way, but really just getting that off your plate. And then the next major thing for us was operations, not being involved in the day to day. All of our field staff is managed by somebody else now, and they do a tremendous job with that, and really give me the flexibility to focus on other things in our company. So to me, it was focusing on uh, figuring out what I enjoyed doing the most, and making
Mhm.
sure that I had enough time to do that, and finding people that enjoy doing things that I don't do, and delegating that off. And for me, the sales one was a tough one because that was something I did enjoy a lot, and it was really passionate about. But I knew that our business would not grow if I was a full-time sales rep forever.
Sure.
So that was a tougher one, but figuring out what within our company I wanted to focus my time on, and finding the right people. And to me, as someone that struggles with delegation, finding the right person was really the key.
Yep.
But then also just giving them the trust and letting them do things their way was another big thing.
Yeah, I've been madly scrambling through my notes trying to find what I'm about to reference because I'm going to butcher this, and then if any of my team is listening to this, they're absolutely going to give me an earful.
Sweet.
As they should.
As they should. Um, however, I'm hoping you guys can bail me out on this. It's called the leadership success model. Starts with delegating and leadership, and it starts with being 100% clear of expectation.
Mhm.
Not 98%, not 99%. It's 100%, because especially someone like Chad and I are going to be. We will have something very specific in our minds of how we want something to look or feel, and then we'll use 3 or 4 words to describe it and expect people to know what that meant
Yeah.
and to implement it, not how they would implement it, but how we would implement it.
Yeah.
If we were them. So it's something I have to ask myself all the time. And frankly, I'm terrible at it, but 100% clarity of expectation is step one. After the 100% clarity of expectation, number two, I believe, is getting buy-in from both sides.
Mhm.
So, it's one thing to bark orders and have people, can accomplish things from the orders. But if you can get buy-in from the other side, it just makes it so much easier, and it also helps with the context of understanding why you're doing something. Oh God, number three. There's 5 steps. I don't remember number three. This is terrible. But I
We're
know
not even halfway there, and you forgot.
I know, but it's 100% clarity of expectations, the one I really focus on, obviously. But the last thing is having a clear, positive.
If I can get to that point, then I don't really. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't care about the middle stuff. But the the last point, and I think the most important for most of us in leadership is going to be consequence. And what I liked about the word consequence was I say consequence, and both of you and everyone will probably think it's a negative thing. If you don't do this, this will happen to you. You know, you get fired, you get in trouble, you whatever, you have to sleep on the couch, something like that.
Mhm.
But consequence could be positive or negative. And changing that of when something goes right, this is what happens positively. When something goes wrong, this is what happens negatively.
Yeah.
But when you're delegating things, there has to be 100% clarity of expectation, and then you're allowed to have a consequence.
Yeah.
But
hmm
a lot
So
of the time, we will delegate things without any consequence.
correct. So there's a request cycle. It's along the lines of what you're talking about, and I actually have all the steps here, so it might help you some, Lars.
That's
But
good.
I was able.
Shocking. You're more prepared.
Well, I have 7 devices in front of me, and so I found the notes on one of them.
I'm sitting in a cave. You've got
Anyway, it's called a request cycle, and it's 5 basic elements. One is providing the why, the context and a mood. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Whatever. Second is a committed speaker. Third is a committed listener. So when we have this conversation, am I committed to the conversation with you, and are you committed to listening to me? Making sure we have good eye contact, verbal communication, so forth. Fourth is the future actions and condition of satisfaction. And the example around this is cut the grass. If I
Mm.
if I ask Lars to cut the grass, then he's going to say, "Sure, yeah, whatever," and I'll get it done whenever. If I ask Tony, "Will you cut the grass?" He's going to literally ask me 17 questions around, "Well, which grass? What kind of grass? What do you want me to use?" Blah blah blah.
how
And
high do you
it's
want me to cut it?
correct. Well, if the problem happens is if you are a high energy individual and you're delegating to somebody that may, like you were saying earlier, may feel intimidated by you or not have a fear of knowledge or confidence, they may not ask those questions. They may just execute on it without clarification. To
Mhm.
which case makes it difficult to delegate because they are not going to be able to execute with clarity. To what Lars was saying, that's why you have to define clearly what the outcome of expectations are. So, in the cut the grass scenario, I want it to be cut this length, our grass in this parameter. I want it to use this lawnmower, and when you're finished, I want you to edge. I want you to clean the equipment, and I want you to put it back in the garage or whatever. That or garage, whatever you guys call it. That
Carpool.
is a what?
It's carpool.
Garage.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so if you can define that and then get clarity on both sides, then you have a commitment of a time frame and the outcome of that, right? You get a response and then a response complaint. And it gives you the ability to delegate, but it gives you also a framework for those that are going to typically leave things a little bit vague and ambiguous. It gives you a framework to check those boxes off and say, am I providing clarity on this? And then when the results happen, we can be happy with it, or if they don't, then we know what we were actually shooting for. So I know that was hopefully it didn't lose everybody there, but the
90 minutes into delegation.
the things that we've delegated here that have provided the most benefit: sales, number 1, purchasing, number 2, training, development.
Mhm.
None of those things would allow growth if they were not delegated, because it would have created a ceiling of limitation.
Mhm.
Did you find your steps there, Lars?
No, I made them up. Yeah, it's written on a board. I can picture it. I just don't have the photo. Oh, hopefully our editing takes care of this.
All right. Who is leading with example? I think this is the final one. Is this on mine?
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause
dang, I think this is you, Chad.
I should probably put names on these things. Next episode, I'm going to put names on these so we'll know exactly who's
That's a
supposed to.
great
It's a
idea, Chad.
fabulous idea.
I like it. It's great.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
Glad you
Um,
came up.
lead with example. I had a conversation with somebody the other day. I've got this kind of theory on leadership that I have used for quite some time that I am kind of looking for in people that, one, I would want to follow, and then two, those that I'm looking for to elevate inside of our organization. Number one, leading with example of acting and don't wait. Be the first one to move when you see a need. second, decide quickly, gather information and make a choice without hesitation. And then three, show, don't tell. Be a role model of what you're doing, of doing the work yourself. And I think it really kind of goes back down to this leading by example. If you can set back and tell people, go do this, go do that. But if you can set the tone of what needs to happen and where you're trying to go, then obviously that is the highest form of leading by example. All too often, people are waiting inside of our organizations to be donned with the cloak of leadership, and I need a role or a title. And I just fight against that wholeheartedly, because I'm looking for people that are going to
Mm-hmm.
step up and lead by example. And it's not always me, but should I be leading by example? Number one, and then two, who are the other people inside of the organization that are stepping in and leading by example? And those are the ones that we want to continue to push in that direction.
Yeah, don't wait for someone to ask you to do something. If you see something that needs to be done, do it. That will be recognized. And making sure as a leader you do recognize that.
Yeah, and doing it not for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others.
Right.
I had an interesting situation actually a couple months ago. So um, we hired a guy that very much so, a culture index people, that'll be high A and high D, but very much so was um, a a self-confident perfectionist is what I would say. um, and we were talking, and he was quite peeved about the lack of formality around our training and learning processes. And he said, I've been here a month and a half, and I don't even have like the caulking I need for, or the electrical tape. I was like, well, dude, just go get it. What do you mean? He's like, well, is that what the process is? Like, no one's told me just to go and do that. And I'm like, yeah, man, like, you have the authority to do whatever you need to get the job done. And he said, okay, now that you've said that,
Mm-hmm.
I will. But, he didn't want to do that without the authority for it. So, that made me think, like, oh man, I got to mention this. So I brought it to the whole team's meeting, and I just made it clear so everyone knows, like, do what you need to do to get the job done, because it's a natural thing to be waiting for the leaders. And I'm blurring between, there's a book called Turn the Ship Around. It's
Yeah.
the leader
Mm-hmm.
mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an American rah Army, Navy, something or other.
You've
Yeah.
clearly read it.
All those things. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I took out of that was, they could talk about intention-based leadership, right? And that I've implemented that with my team, and now I get messages, hey, I intend to do this. And it
Yeah.
makes it so much easier for me to just say, yeah, man, have at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds good. Or on the, actually, I don't even think I've come across the occasion where I've ever said no to that.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I'm going to do, rather than, hey, do you mind if I
Yeah.
do this?
I don't want people to ask me, can I do this? Tell me what you plan to do, and
Right.
and I'll give you any input. But
Yeah. Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
I was going to say personal story on leading with example. I know you guys may be shocked to hear this, but I am not the most timely individual. Um, and
Really?
I used to struggle with, then others would not be on time to meetings. And
Mhm.
our meetings would be disorganized, and it was always in my head because, well, I have a million things to do, and there's whatever, I can't get there on time. But then I started realizing no one would get there on time, and I was like, and then you guys gave me enough crap about it that I finally was like, well, I should probably start trying to be on time places. And I have made a very intentional shift on trying to be timely. I'm still not the best, but I'm at least better than the two of you, I believe.
So you weren't even trying to be on time before? You made the change to try to be on time?
Well, I wasn't trying hard enough. Definitely wasn't trying hard enough. I did not realize the impact it had on others when I was not
Hmm.
on time. So once I realized that
Maybe I
impact,
wasn't clear on my feedback. When you're dawdling along and I'm screaming at you to get your ass in the golf cart,
well, that's different. That's
that
different.
wasn't
That's
clear
just my
enough?
natural mode of transportation is to not move quickly. But I just realized I need to leave sooner if I want to be on time.
Oh,
So,
that's
but no, where I'm going with this is when I was not leading by example and being on time, others were not on time, and it was really hard to get
Mhm.
upset at somebody else if they were not on time when
yes.
I was perpetually late.
Sure.
Now I mean, there are still instances where I am late to a meeting, but it is very rare. And And now we try to be very timely. If a meeting starts, Lars, you taught me a trick a while ago. We don't do this with all our meetings, but sometimes I'll set up a meeting for 9:04. I think you
Mhm.
mentioned a story about a hockey coach that started practice every day at 7:07 in the morning or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was 7:07 because he wanted to be clear that we start at 7:07, not 7:06, not 7:08, and we are timely and we are punctual.
Hmm.
And I'll do that on occasion with some meetings with some people, and they'll be like, "Why are you doing this?" But mainly just to mess with them. But I have made an intentional shift on being very accountable and timely. And there are times again where it happens where I'm not, but overall we start meetings on time, and that was not possible until I fixed my own actions.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
ask Greta about it and see how it's working.
I think she would say I'm doing a lot better. You
Well,
can ask her.
the
Shoot her a
hokey
text right now.
pokey,
See what she says.
yeah, the hokey pokey still does its thing. The hockey coach you're
I just
referring to,
pokey earlier in the day, and then leave earlier, and then I can pokey
it
my way.
it was Andy Murray was the hockey coach, and he was coach of the LA Kings and St. Louis Blues for years. And he started his practice at 3 minutes past the hour, he meant literally when that clock struck 4:03,
Mm-hmm.
whistle blows and it's go time, because there's no ambiguity. If you set a meeting for 4 o'clock, it means it's going to start about 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when he says 4:03, he means 4:03, and
Mhm.
he is never late. It's about setting that expectation and being clear. And then he'd say the practice will go for 37 minutes. And on 37 minutes, it doesn't matter. He might be mid sentence. He'll blow the whistle and they skate off the ice. It's setting that consistency. And I think that's probably the hardest part of leading by example, is being consistent with it. I would suggest that, if there's 10 things that you want to start doing, pick one and make it part of the routine. Atomic Habits is a book that talks about routine, and there's so much research and conversation right now going around the world about routine, because basically you have a cell phone in your hand that gives you infinite amount of distractions
Mhm.
about everything always. And to be an effective leader, you can't try and do everything always. So get in a routine, establish one thing, turn it into a habit. Once it's a habit, then you can look at other things. But being on time is, as much as I like laughing at you, Tony, it's honestly, it's a very important thing, and I'm bad for it myself. And I always think that what I'm doing is going to be more important. But
Mhm.
establishing that as part of your culture um, is, I'd say, is probably pretty critical in our industry for sure. If you look at reviews, we showed up on time, we did what we
Mhm.
said we were going to do, and we did it for the price we said we would. If you
Yep.
can do
Yeah.
those three things, you're going to have a successful company.
And I think it all goes back to this topic, leading by example. We may think that you've all said it. We may think that what we're doing is so much more important,
Mhm.
but ultimately we're setting an example to say your time is not as valuable as mine, right? And it's happened to all of us. I think we could all agree that with the exception of Tony always being late for every event that we always ever have together,
Ever in history.
ever,
Yeah.
period. I struggle with that. Meetings roll over. I don't honor the end of the meeting as much as the start of the meeting,
Mhm.
and that's as much as a disrespect to the remainder of it. And that's not setting an example. That's showing that we don't keep our word on the amount of time that we
Mhm.
have. So,
As we sit here and our countdown has been saying 3 minutes for the last 6 minutes.
Tony,
A
why
little
are you gonna
salty,
be so
wasn't it?
negative?
I
Yeah.
just,
See, do you need a
just saying
soulmate
we're
there to hang out with? Okay, this great information. I do think at some point maybe we should do an episode around habit building or
Hmm.
habit hacks, because I would say, obviously, Culture Index side, Lars and myself are probably a struggle with starting something and then figuring out a hack to keep consistent. Tony, once he starts something and believes in it, then he's going to do it until he dies. So that would probably be a good conversation around how we navigate that based off of our personalities. But out as for today, I think we have exhausted this topic around developing our team. I think the big thing note is it's an ongoing process. It's not something that you do once. It's an always ever evolving. And you heard us all say multiple times, well, we started this 18 months ago. We started this 3 months ago. Well, we did this 5 years ago, and then we had to change it. So it's an always ever evolving process. But as a reminder, all of this information, show notes, and everything is available on our website, unlockedpodcast.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to chatting with you, I guess. Is that what you would do on a podcast?
Sure.
You
Okay.
chat. Yeah.
Banter, chat.
We'll do all
Chat
those things.
at you. I don't know.
We'll do all those things next time on the Unlocked podcast.